Share a screen real quick here. Let me know when you guys can see that. Looks like a blob. Yeah, so 8 weeks ago, I had open heart surgery to replace the aortic valve. Surgery went very well. I'm recovering nicely, faster than they've seen folks normally recover. Awesome. Still more work to go. I went into that whole process determined to come out of it with whole life improvement. And I started designing a process that felt right according to my gut and heart that would take me through the whole experience from really the moment I woke up after the heart attack to the testing, the consultation, the pre-op, the surgery, the ICU recovery, then the cardiac ward recovery, and now through the rehab. So I put together a process. I'm very satisfied with what happened. And I'm staying with the plan that came out of it. So I made a sketch in the first week of that whole process, when I got home, to describe and in an artifact what that process was. And I was also multitasking. I was trying a new drawing program on my little sketch pad. And so I scribbled this out in about a minute and then gave about a 15 or 20 minute lecture on the steps that I followed to go through it. Decided that I'm going to write a paper on this because I promised my surgeon and my mentor, David Boji, that I was going to write up what it was that I did so that they could have an artifact of what I was doing. The surgeon was interested because he said he had never seen anybody as serene as me, nor someone who decided what to do as quickly as I did. I think our consultation lasted 2 minutes about what surgery to have and what form of replacement valve to use. And then to decide to go that following Monday at the first opportunity. And that took less than 2 minutes for us to, from the time he walked in the door till we had that decision in hand. So he was interested in what I was doing. We had some long talks, person to person, later. And then I wanted to describe the process that I followed. So I put together this little, it looks like a dog's breakfast. It's very hard to read. My work in progress this week was I'm starting to working on putting the process of this impressionistic painting into a formal paper presentation. As part of that, last night I put together this, which has the same information as the other diagram, but is now more of a structured approach. For example, this one specifies in detail let's see if I can find my, there he is. I called it the Life Audit Theater process. It incorporates 3 different processes. The vision quest of my spirit guide, I guess, blood brother. He's a Lakota Sioux medicine man who gave me 4 words to work on. Met him in a true story circle that I was hosting for Professor Boji, and we've just stayed in touch every week. So I was incorporating the elements of his vision quest. I was incorporating elements of the Nican introspection process, which is a process used by Zen practitioners in Japan to work on personal relationships. It's based on 3 different questions that you ask over the course of a week in a small room sitting on a mat with a journal and nothing else. You just focus on answering those 3 questions about people in your life. What has that person given you? What have you given that person? What problems have you caused? And then the true storytelling process that we're in right now from David Boji, which emphasizes the safety, trust, truth, and opportunity, the creation of artifacts in order to have something to reflect on, but also to put on the ground as a marker for that event which happened at that moment. And then the 7 principles of true storytelling. Well, so I wanted to incorporate all 3 of those things. It was my process that I was designing was concerned with these intentions and I wanted my process to feature these things. Apparently serenity was really important because I had it on there twice. But those were the things that shaped the process I came up with that was personalized. The conditions were that from the time I went into pre-op till the time that I got home, those 7 days, 8 days, no phones, no TV or radio or any media, no visitors except my wife and daughters, no books, no computer. I could make notes, handwritten, I could make sketches, and I was going to visualize and remember everything, and I was going to really concentrate on relaxing, and I was going to trust in whatever guide came to my assistance, and that the scribe was going to record everything, and I could remember it. And so essentially, I had a casting call where I said I wanted not just the people in my life, but places, things, events, voices, and documents. It was like a casting call, went out to the world, and I said, please show up from my past, present, and future and sit in the audience in this big theater, and then one at a time, in an order that makes sense, come up on the stage and interact with me and help me understand the answers to these questions, and this was going to be a safe space, and that my observer and scribe were going to record that into an artifact, and that was going to go up on this great big display screen behind the stage, something like past, present, and future, close, middle, and far, whatever that means in terms of time and space. And that as I created artifacts, these were going to get posted on this infinitely large screen, and I was going to post that artifact, and I was also going to reflect on the connections between these stories, and I was going to look for themes that might emerge. And this tapestry, this was going to be unintentional in the sense of not pre-designed, but really as this thing would get crafted into an artifact, it would go into a place that made sense, and I would look at some point when I was not doing one of these things, I was up here reflecting on the thing. So, and I was going to trust the director, guide, and mentor and coordinator to spend time between the growing tapestry of my life and then the intense exchange on the stage in front of all of these elements of my life that had showed up for me. And it might take this person 2 or 3 times on stage to uncover, progressively everything that was that needed to be said. And I was going to let each member of this studio audience not only witness, but also and hear, but also take as much time as you needed to get on the stage and talk. And I noticed as I was doing this whole thing that there was part of me on the stage being the actor, listening to and engaging with whatever the current thing was. But also all these other elements were showing up. And I was surrendering to the process and try to make sure that I had completely emptied my bowl so that nothing was left. And that once all this was done, I didn't have to do anything with it. Just the fact of doing it and completely emptying my bowl was enough. And I was just committed to sitting in that circle of nothing else until it was time to do something else, in which I was going to do that with an intention of love. But that nothing was required of me other than just to do this thing to completion, which I got from Mike Three Bears, my spirit guide. So this is what the new form of this thing now looks like. It's going to help me write about this in a more structured way in the paper that I'm going to present. But I was also just interested in noticing, the difference on this tapestry of my life, this form of the story that I'm telling you now, and the other artifact, which look like that. It's the same content, but the story, you never tell it the same way twice. You never step in the same river twice. So there's sort of that dynamic which captures this, how the stories of our life iterate and this story informs that next time you tell it, and that the people in the circle with you are part of that shaping, and who you are as a person who's changed over time based on the path you've taken and the reflections you've had. That's sort of what this process of living in a true story style is like. You have these moments in these circles where you are resting, recovering, reframing, relating, restorying, reconning, rehabilitating, all those R words that happen inside this story circle with others. And that when it's time to do something else, it becomes clear it's time to do something, and you just trust the direction you go in as guided in that moment by whatever it is that's driving you, as driven by your intention towards some set of values. So anyway, this whole living story process is what that infinite screen was like for me. And as I think about that, I had my heart attack on a Monday, did testing and then consulting with the surgeon on a Wednesday. We decided here that we would have the surgery on Monday. I had pre-op on Friday. I started fasting. I was offloading everything in my life to be completely free to experience the surgery and this process. That from the pre-op to the surgery, I was engaged in designing this process and deciding how I was going to do it while I was fasting. When I came going into the surgery, I had this all in mind and what I was going to do if I woke up from the surgery. And then I woke up from the surgery, and then from this moment forward, until about noon on Friday, I was engaged in this thing called the Life Audit Theater, I'm calling it. Friday morning at about 2:30, I was absolutely wide awake and clear, and that I felt great confidence that I had done what I proposed to do correctly, and that it was time to work on the future part of this, and it was a deciding what intentions to go forward and what goals and objectives and what pathways and projects and whatever to decide what I was going to do in priority, sort of, that transition to the next steps. And that was really preparing for the departure of, from the true story circle that I had been in. And I was content that whoever had showed up, people, places, things, events, voices, cared enough to show up, were important enough to show up, that I was satisfied that I engaged with it each as truthfully as I could, and that I had documented as much as I could and remembered it, and that was going to shape what was important to me as I'm living my life going forward. And so this is part of that living story process, is just to report on the work in progress. This is the current form of this artifact. So I shared it last night with Mike Three Bears, who is my friend, my Lakota Sioux medicine man, and shared it with David Boji, my true storytelling mentor, and my inner guide, who's concerned with these things, the people side of this. What I added to the nightcan was that each of these became an actor, and I treated them as if they had a voice and they were part of the living process of energy. So Mike Three Bears typically sent me one sentence of insight. He said, humbly, in his opinion, that I should think about and realize that there's a lot of words on this page, and that it may be time for me to get deeper directly into my body, where mind and heart intersect, so that I can not think that I'm done just because I've listed words on a page, but that I really need to check in and fully integrate at the body and cellular level. And so for me, and I'll talk about it in my article and whatnot, that the artifacts that for me come out of this true story circle, I create the artifact so that I can be free and empty and embodied when I leave, knowing that artifact is there, testifying as best I could to whatever happened in here. And that I can, wherever it's time to, tell a story or come back, that artifact is its own thing, and it can be part of this process, but I'm really free to walk the road, to walk the path, having externalized all that into the artifact as best I could, and leaving that as a work of art, which is the starting root of artifact. It's a combination of art plus I, who was there at the creation of it, and it was as factual, truthful as I could make it. So even the word ends up having some kind of hidden, mysterious power. Just the shape of the word itself, like, I got to reflect on that. Have I really lived up? Have I been as artful as I can be? Was it driven by me, and am I taking responsibility for only my story? And was I as truthful as I could be? Now that frees me to think about that in the next time I get into a circle. So that's where the telling of this story, of this experience is. It was the lived experience for sure. It's stuck in my memory. The recording about 1 week in, which featured that sketch, happened. And now 8 weeks later, I've told that story in this way, in another true story circle, with a different artifact, but referring to the artifact that came out of this one. And so both my memory of that and the artifact itself and the journey and where I am now, with the intention of, in about another 8 weeks, having the paper and the presentation at that next conference. And all along the way, thinking about what Mike Three Bears is saying is, don't think that all the words that are associated with this is everything that there is. There's also what is embodied with mind and heart and body, which he tied together by spirit, which is where he lives, fully in the spirit all the time, which I'm trying to experience and discover my own way by listening carefully to what he tells me and reflecting on it, and trying to live that forward, with the support and love that he gives me as part of that body of knowledge. My testifying and testimony and all that is part of this body of knowledge. And the Nican process of understanding or living again and reflecting on the relationships between me and other people, to remind myself that of the obligations to the tribe and the people around me. So that for me is why those three bodies of knowledge became very important to include in this process, which went from literally age 66 on the last day of my soccer summer camp, after scrimmaging with those kids, having a heart attack on the field and having to be medevac. That was a significant emotional event. And now I realize, I am exactly 8 weeks forward from that whole event happening. And the central organizing principle of my conscious intentional living is being driven and guided by this systematic process that I felt was correct for me at this time. That's who I was exactly at that time, and living forward, this was my response to that event. And this is where I am now in this True Story Circle, telling you what it was like, where I am, and where I am going forward as truthfully as I can. Aho.